In the final module of this course, we'll go over some challenges you'll face during web scraping and also some methods to increase scraping efficiency. Here's a more detailed overview of what we'll cover during this module. We'll go over common challenges you'll be up against while scraping. Things like restricted bot access, structural changes, issues with data quality, etc. Then, I'll walk you through some tips that are commonly employed to increase scraping efficiency. And finally, we'll go through some practices that are widely accepted in the field. Let's look at some common challenges you'll be up against while scraping web pages. First up is the lack of bot access. Websites are free to choose whether they allow agents or bots, and you'll come across plenty of them that do not allow automated web crawling. Reasons could vary from the malicious to the benign, where they simply don't want you replicating their content elsewhere. As for malicious reasons, there are times when bots scrape data with the intention of gaining competitive advantage and drain the server resources of the website they are scraping from, thus adversely affecting site performance. To see if a website allows scraping, always check the robots.txt file in which they would have specified what bots are allowed or disallowed and on which sections of the website. You can find the file at www.thewebsitename.com/robots.txt. Also, do check their terms of service in order to understand what they allow you to do with the data you've just scraped. CAPTCHAs are completely automated public Turing tests to tell computers and humans apart has been implemented to do just that, differentiating between computers and humans and consequently keeping spam away. In the presence of CAPTCHAs, basic scraping scripts tend to fail. However, advancements have been made into getting around these, although the same can be said for CAPTCHAs as well. Although the technology to overcome CAPTCHAs can be implemented, they could still slow down the scraping process quite a bit. Frequent structural changes. In order to keep up with the advancements in UI and UX, and to add more features, websites undergo regular structural changes. The web scrapers are specifically written with respect to the code elements of the web page at the point of setup, so frequent changes complicates the codes, giving scrapers some sort of a hard time. Though every structural change will not affect the web scraper setup, but as any sort of change may result in data loss, it is recommended to keep a tab on the updates made to the site or to outsource web scraping projects to a dedicated service provider who will take complete care of the monitoring and maintenance of crawlers. Getting blocked or banned. IP blocking is an issue that's rarely a problem to the good web crawling bots. However, they can be false positives, and sometimes even the harmless bots could get blocked by the IP blocking mechanisms implemented by target sites. IP blocking typically happens when a server detects unnaturally high number of requests from the same IP address, or if the crawler makes multiple parallel requests. Some IP blocking mechanisms are a bit too aggressive and can block the crawler even if it follows the best practices of web scraping. Websites can also make use of honeypot traps. Honeypots are meant to detect crawlers or scrapers. These can be hidden links that are not visible to the users, but can be extracted by scrapers or spiders. Once your crawler visits such a link, your IP address can be flagged for further investigation, or even be instantly blocked. There are also bot blocking services that could be integrated into the website in order to identify and block automated web crawlers. Dynamic content. Although websites are increasingly becoming interactive and user-friendly, this has a reverse effect on web crawlers. In fact, new websites with a lot of dynamic coding practices are not at all crawler-friendly. Examples of these are lazy loading images, infinite scrolling, etc. Selenium has plenty of techniques for getting around these, some of which we have already seen in this course. Questionable data quality. It is important that the quality of the data collected by the scraper is kept high. Faulty data can cause serious problems if you're using any ML or AI technologies on top of the collected data. Making sure the data meets quality guidelines while crawling is difficult because it needs to be performed in real time. One thing you can do for this is to write test cases. You can make sure whatever your scrapers are extracting is correct and they are not scraping any bad data. To wrap up the course, let's talk about some best practices and tips to increase efficiency while scraping. Avoid loading images. Most of the modern dynamic websites have lots of images. When a page loads, Selenium loads all the elements in it, including those images. If we don't interact with them much, this becomes useless and slows our script down. This is particularly problematic in the parent if we run our scripts hundreds of times. The workaround to this is to use Chrome options to load pages without loading images. Employing disk cache. In modern web browsers, disk caching reduces page loading times by a good margin. This basically stores all the website assets like CSS, JavaScript in disk storage for faster loading, which is helpful when you load multiple pages to the same website. Again, all you have to do to implement it practically is to use Chrome options to configure the driver to do this while initializing. Close driver with quit. It is important to properly close the driver after finishing the automation, especially if you run your scripts periodically. When you invoke your Python automation script to do things for you, it uses additional resources and processes for the Selenium web drivers. After the Python script finishes execution, it doesn't release those additional resources if you don't tell it to do so. A method to do that is driver.close. But it doesn't always stop the WebDriver running in the background. For example, if you're doing things using multiple tabs of the Selenium web browser, then it closes only the current one, which is why it is recommended to use driver.quit, which closes all the tabs of the Selenium web browser. Now, let's look at some of the best practices employed in the field. Respect robots.txt. As I have mentioned before, robots.txt is a text file webmasters create to instruct robots how to crawl and index pages on their website. So, this file generally contains instructions for the crawlers. Robots.txt should be the first thing to check when you're planning to scrape a website. Every website would have some set of rules on how bots and spiders should interact with the site in their robots.txt file. Some websites block bots altogether in their robots file. If that is the case, it is best to leave the site and not attempt to crawl them. Scraping sites that block bots is illegal. Apart from just blocking, the robots file also specifies a set of rules that they consider as good behavior on that site, such as areas that are allowed to be crawled, restricted pages, and frequently limits for crawling. Don't hit web servers too frequently. Web servers are not fail-proof. Any web server will slow down or crash if the load on it exceeds a certain limit up to which it can handle. Sending multiple requests too frequently can result in the website server going down or the site becoming too slow to load. This creates a bad user experience for human visitors on the website. While scraping, you should always hit the website with a reasonable time gap and keep the number of parallel requests in control. Don't scrape during peak hours. To make sure that a website isn't slowed down due to high traffic accounting for humans as well as bots, it is better to schedule your web crawling tasks to run in the off-peak hours. The off-peak hours of the site can be determined by the geolocation of where the site's traffic is from. By scraping during the off-peak hours, You can avoid any possible load you might put on the server during the peak hours. This will in turn benefit you in the sense that it will help in significantly improving the speed of the scraping process. Use a headless browser. This is again something that was mentioned during a demo, but it does bear repeating. A headless browser is faster and lightweight. Avoid using the same crawling pattern. Only robots follow the same crawling pattern because unless specified otherwise, program bots follow a logic which is usually very specific. Sites that have intelligent anti-crawling mechanisms can easily detect agents from finding the pattern in their actions. Embrace transparency. Don't misrepresent your purpose or use deceptive methods to gain access. If you have a login and password that identifies you to gain access to a source, use it. Don't hide who you are. If possible, share your credentials. With that, we come to the end of this module and this course. This module was comprised mainly of two different parts: challenges faced during and tips for web scraping. We explored 6 different types of challenges, namely lack of bot access, CAPTCHAs, frequent structural changes, getting blocked or banned, dynamic content, and questionable data quality. We went over 3 tips to increase efficiency of scraping: avoid loading images, employing disk cache, and closing driver with quit. And lastly, we learned 6 widely accepted best practices for scraping, which are respecting the robots.txt file, not hitting servers frequently, not to scrape during peak hours, using a headless browser, avoiding the same crawling pattern, and embracing transparency. That's it. It's been an absolute pleasure presenting the course to you. I hope you enjoyed the learning process as much as I enjoyed teaching. Good luck!